franchise is a business. We call it a business on training wheels. There's no guarantee in anything. There's no guarantee in the stock market. There's no guarantee in a business. It's a lot of hours to launch a business. Some people have a full-time job and are running this on the side. It's still going to be a lot of work, at least initially, to get the business up and running. Will I be stuck in a territory that limits my growth? So, when you're buying a territory, each franchise will have different criteria. Some will be just strictly population. Others will have an age group, senior care, maybe the age group of 70, 75 years of age and older. If it's private pay, they're going to look at average household income. There's going to be opportunity for growth in the territory. So in some cases, you're going to try to figure out what the average franchisee does in revenue as well as profitability. So it may be one of those where you're looking at a second territory and doubling the population that you can go after. I wouldn't say it limits your growth, but you're definitely locked in so that you don't have other franchisees competing with you. You will potentially look at additional franchises for growth or, either with territory or staying in your territory and what we call vertical expansion or brand stacking, where you're adding these complementary brands to complement, if you got the painting business and have relationship with 1,000 customers, you may add on a roofing business, cleaning business, anything involved with the home.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the Franchise Guide.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, the show where we help corporate executives experience time and financial freedom. You got me today. We just had a last minute cancellation, a reschedule for a guest. And I said, what can we talk about this week? And was watching a video by Alex Hormozy, which is actually perfect timing, and said ideas for creating content sometimes are right in front of us. It could just be reviewing the last couple of weeks of conversations and questions that came up, concerns, topics, agendas, things like that, and actually using conversations you're having with your clients and customers. So that's what we did today. For today's show, I thought it would be really helpful because, part of franchising, right? It's, really excited. It's a new chapter in life, but some fears come up and concerns. So wanted to review, I think we have here, I have a long list of notes here, 15. We'll see if we can get it in one show. Worst case, we'll split this up, but we're going to go through the top 15 concerns that potential franchisees have when considering franchise ownership. Glad you could join us today. If you are ready for change and are interested in exploring franchising, give us a shout. Go to the website, ggthefranchiseguide.com. Check out our book, Franchise Freedom, same name as our podcast. And you can book a call directly with us. There's a quiz there, which will help you figure out 3 questions if franchising may be a good fit. Take advantage of that. Worst case, you get a copy of the book, so you have nothing to lose. And diving into the topic today, we're going to go through 15 concerns. So number 1, what if I pick the wrong franchise? Now, I think this is more for someone that's doing the research on their own. We're not guessing here. We're putting in a lot of time, a lot of effort. And I think the secret here is really working in reverse, figuring out what the ideal franchise looks like, as opposed to just going to a list of top 100 franchises, top 500 franchises. And I'm not saying anything wrong with those lists, but there's not much substance. What's the criteria? How are they added to the list? What if I pick the wrong franchise? We're figuring out what the ideal franchise looks like. You've got to keep your job and run it part-time. You want a franchise that allows for semi-absentee or part-time ownership. That franchisor will let you know, especially on that first call, if they allow that type of ownership. It's going to talk about the investment, right? The investment has to be in line. Territory, the location has to be available. Employees. If you don't like a lot of employees, you're going to put that in your franchise model, what the ideal business looks like, and look for brands that fit that model. And you're having multiple calls with the franchise, multiple calls with the franchisees, as well as meeting with the C-suite founders, president, as well as other potential franchise owners. So we're not guessing here. We're making an informed decision. That should not be a concern as long as you're spending enough time on the due diligence up front. Number 2, interesting one. Will I actually make money? And at the end of the day, what is a franchise? A franchise is a business. We call it a business on training wheels. There's no guarantee in anything. There's no guaranteed in the stock market. There's no guaranteed in a business, a mom and pop startup or a franchise. The franchise has a proven model, proven system. They're giving you the tools, the keys to everything, but you need to follow that system. Sometimes you will follow that system and struggle a little bit, and being disciplined enough to go back and work with the franchisor, contact the coach. Can you make money with the franchise? Absolutely. Can you lose money? Absolutely. It is a business. It is a risk. But if you follow the system, you want to put as much, find the right franchise, right system, check out the financials, right? You're going to create a pro forma, look at item 7 and 19 in the franchise disclosure document. Ultimately, no one's going to be able to give you that info. You can talk to fellow franchisees and check on their progress, how they've done in the past, and really putting all that information together in order to move forward with your franchise. Number 3, what if I lose my investment? Well, we want to avoid losing an investment. And usually with losing an investment, that means like going out of business. And that goes back to, the other concern of, will I actually make money, or even what if I pick the wrong franchise? Again, risk in a franchise and in any business. But with that being said, if you are assuming that, you spent the time on the due diligence and the fits there, it's a lot of work the first year. So it's setting the expectation that you may not make any money, or even if you've made any money, I usually recommend, if you can afford it, reinvesting as much as you can, putting all the profits back in the business the first year so that you can truly build it up. Make sure you have sufficient staff, marketing, and anything else needed for the business, so that maybe starting in year 2, you can work more on the business versus in the business. So, there is, depending how you fund it, that's money that you have to invest in the business. We don't want you to lose that franchise fee. Franchisor doesn't want you to go out of business either. So ask for help, talk to your fellow franchisees, follow the system, just, consistently follow. And if you're struggling with a key area, follow up. If it's not a neighboring franchisee, the franchisor can work with you and speaking with other fellow franchisees across the country. Number 4, I don't want to work 80 hours a week. When owning a business, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours to launch a business. Some people have a full-time job and are running this on the side. It's still going to be a lot of work, at least initially, to get the business up and running. You got to find that right general manager running the day-to-day and staff a franchise in the water and smoke mitigation space. So it's going to be something new. So there's a learning curve there. I don't know about exact hours, but I worked a lot of hours when I first started. I ran my business full-time. But if you're running it part-time, factoring a lot of hours and kind of how long it'll take to really get trained and the business launched. Sometimes the first hire doesn't work out and there needs to be a replacement. That's okay. That's part of business ownership. Once the business is up and running, I'll do whatever it takes to get up and running. I don't want to work 80 hours after the first year. Okay. Or the first 6 months. Okay. Who do we have to put in place? Who's handling the marketing? Franchisor. Great. Still need someone to review the KPIs. That would be me, the owner. Salesperson's going out. Maybe it's a weekly check-in to go over quotes and training. Maybe that's with the general manager. Maybe that's with you. It's really figuring out and constantly tweaking. If you're noticing that one area is taking a lot longer, maybe that goes to the general manager. Maybe that gets split up over the week. So expect to work a lot of hours, but with the whole point to take advantage of those systems and to take a step back. I've never owned a business before. Can I really do this? Great question. A franchise is a business. A lot of people will go the franchise route because the system is in place. It's been proven. The CRMs, the marketing, the website, all that's really been handled for you. In many cases, you may even have national accounts you can tap into. The franchisor does not require experience, nor do they require business ownership experience, specifically in that industry. They're looking for that right match for the person, the required financials, liquid and net worth financials, has a means to fund this thing, has the right skill set and attitude. And not saying, well, how quickly can I make $1 million my first month? You have to have the right attitude, following the system, team player. There's going to be annual conferences. You may get asked to speak with potential franchise candidates down the road. Absolutely. Can you really do it? Well, you're going to follow the system and do whatever it takes. Define your role in the business, which may change. Sometimes the role day 1 is going to be different than day 365, and kind of putting together expectations of what it is now and what that will be after the first year. These are all really good and actual questions I get and have received. I jot them down and review them Will the franchisor really support me? Now, this is a good question because with 4,000 franchise companies out there, not all franchises are created the same. The franchisor will talk about their training on your first couple calls, the support and everything else involved. They may even give you access to their training portals, both virtually, in person, what all that looks like. What happens if there's turnover, you have to hire a new general manager, that kind of deal. What you're going to hear is in stage 2, due diligence, the validation calls with your fellow franchisees. Are you getting the support you were promised? Not just initially to launch the business, but throughout the process. When you had issues, were they there? Were they open to suggestions? So those validation calls will be crucial and give you an idea of what support will look like. That is a key area a lot of people skip or don't realize. They maybe talk to one franchisee and I feel that's sufficient. I recommend speaking with a handful of franchisees, maybe some veterans, some newer franchisees, some franchisees that are running at part-time versus full-time initially. That way you kind of get a nice mix of feedback from people that ran it maybe a little bit differently. All right, number 7, how do I know if a franchise is financially healthy? Great question. The franchisor legally every single year has to update their FDD, the franchise disclosure document. In that franchise disclosure document, towards the end, are going to be audited financials. They're audited. There's an extra cost. Franchises are regulated by the FTC and making sure those numbers are accurate. So not only are they closing the books for the year, but in that, they're going to capture everything financially, have an auditor go in, make sure the numbers are accurate, check on things, make phone calls, send letters to vendors and that kind of stuff. So you're going to do a mixture of that. In the FDD, we'll list any type of lawsuits if that's a concern of yours. And that's the first couple items. I forget the exact item there. 2 or 3, if I'm not mistaken. You'll have everything in there. You can also, at some point, have a franchise attorney review. Not that they're going to be experts in the financials, but have they heard of the brand? Are there any red flags they see? Plus any research you do online or speaking with your validation calls with the franchisees. Great questions here. And number 8, I'm worried about being locked into a long-term agreement. There is an agreement between you and the franchisor. Typically, they average about 10 years. I've seen some brands do 5. I've seen some others do 20 years. But really, you're building long-term equity here. That there's going to take time to build the business up, figure out an exit strategy, how you're going to sell, and all that. That long-term agreement locks in the terms. It protects you as the franchisee. Everything has to be laid out exactly how the agreement reads, so that there's no changes. So you know that there's not going to be any crazy changes over those 10 years. And so that is a typical agreement is going to be 10 years. But at any point in time, if you wanted to sell the agreement, you would essentially do a transfer. Someone will pay, there may be a nominal transfer fee, and then the franchisor will have to meet the buyer because that relationship will continue with the buyer. So another good question. Number 9, can I still have a life and spend time with family? Absolutely. And that goes back to picking the right model, spending time with family. We call that time freedom. Time freedom is definitely the number 1, followed by financial. If you're running it semi-absentee, they're going to have a train-the-trainer program. How are you going to support me if I keep my job? And then figuring out what is the right franchise, but also equally important, which is not on the franchise, it's on you, is finding the right general manager to run the day-to-day. That general manager needs to be really clear on their job function, the requirements, who handles what, because you want there to be balance. You don't need to be involved on every single call, every single issue or decision. That manager needs to be empowered to make certain decisions. The more empowered they are, the more freedom you'll have, and you're not being involved or having to be in the office or just maybe checking in virtually, doing an hour Zoom call with the office. So those are things to think about. And then again, going back to speaking with franchisees, asking about their work-life balance and asking them for any recommendations on setups, roles for the manager. Maybe they can share a job description. Those will all be great starting points. Number 10, what if I don't like managing people? Another great question, but it goes back to the basics. What is the right fit? You may have management experience, but don't like managing people, and that's okay. Some brands will have higher staff and maybe require you to be full-time. There's going to be a big management function, and maybe that's not a good fit. But if you know you don't like managing people, you're more big picture, maybe managing a small office of 2 or 3 W-2 employees, and then having your technicians, your labor that are W-9 contractors, you can have your GM handle that, or you just hire someone to deal with the HR while you're overseeing marketing and big picture stuff. It goes back to finding the right franchise where you as the owner don't have to be the manager, managing the entire staff or a portion of the staff and maybe not the technicians and the contractors. All right, how much money do I need to get started? Ranges on franchises are all over the map. Franchise fees, I've seen anywhere from $10,000 to over $100,000 plus all the other costs. We've seen a lot of non-brick and mortar franchises fall in that $100,000 to $200,000 range. Can the investment be less? Absolutely. Can it be more? Absolutely. But keep in mind, this is a range that usually will cover the franchise fee, training and startup, and your first 90 days of operation. So you have some payroll, working capital, and things like that. Brick and mortar, you can get into the $350K plus range. But what you're looking at as far as how much money, each franchise will have a net worth and liquidity requirement. But as far as cash out of pocket, if you're using a retirement rollover, it could be the entire investment since you're using your retirement assets. People that are using an SBA government-backed loan, you're looking at about 20 to 30% of the project cost. So what I recommend, if it's on a $200K investment, it may be 40 to 60,000, but also having that buffer, right? The business takes a little bit longer to get up and running. A territory that you want to pick up a second territory, or maybe there's a resale in the market that you want to take advantage of and bundle it together with your territory or location, always having access to funds. So liquid capital or bare minimum, a line of credit. But 20 to 30% of the project, if you're doing, and that's with the loan. If you're doing a retirement, it's your own retirement assets and you can just fund the entire thing. Some people use a combination, and we refer everyone on these questions to Benetrends. We have a great relationship and send everyone over for a free consultation to review all those different options. So great question. All right, we're on 12 of 15. What if the franchisor changes things after I sign? The franchise agreement spells out your rights, and there's going to be full transparency of exactly what's in the agreement. So if there is a chance of any agreement, any changes, they will let you know. Or if there is a certain lock-in clause, read that franchise agreement, get clear on everything, and bring it up to the franchisor. But typically that's why you sign that 5, 10 plus year agreement, as they lock everything in. But if there is any type of changes, number one, it needs to be listed in the franchise agreement. Number two, the franchisor needs to communicate and be transparent about any change or any issues. But that's why we have these agreements to have everything spelled out. 13, will I be stuck in a territory that limits my growth? So, when you're buying a territory, each franchise will have different criteria. Some will be just strictly population. Others will have an age group, senior care, maybe the age group of 70, 75 years of age and older. If it's private pay, they're going to look at average household income. There's going to be opportunity for growth in the territory. So in some cases, you're going to try to figure out what the average franchisee does in revenue as well as profitability. So it may be one of those where you're looking at a second territory and doubling the population that you can go after. I wouldn't say it limits your growth, but you're definitely locked in so that you don't have other franchisees competing with you. You will potentially look at additional franchises for growth, or either with territory or staying in your territory and what we call vertical expansion or brand stacking, where you're adding these complementary brands to complement. If you got the painting business and have relationship with 1,000 customers, you may add on a roofing business, cleaning business, anything involved with the home. Great question. 14, do I have to do all the marketing? No, it really depends on the franchise you buy. So a lot of the B2B type of franchises may not have marketing in-house, but they'll have you go out and network at the Chamber of Commerce. If you're providing a service, reducing expenses for small businesses, going to be a lot of chamber meetings, maybe some events, one-on-ones and things like that. Some, which is very common in home services, B2C, franchisor may handle all the virtual digital marketing for you. You're still overseeing it, reviewing the KPIs, making sure the lead flow's there, the close rate's there, to figure out if the quality of lead is a salesperson getting a good quality lead but not closing it. So once you have these benchmarks and you know what the average close ratio is, if you're not meeting those numbers, you have to revisit and say, okay, what changes do we have to make? And the messaging, maybe the market's going to be slightly different. Marketing is going to vary starting from scratch. If there are no marketing being created for you, they'll train you on that. Some cases, they'll provide you the assets, the ebooks to post on your own. But that really comes down to what that franchisor is offering to you. What happens if I want out? This is the exit strategy. You sign a 10-year franchise agreement, 2 years go by, you want to sell it for a profit. Maybe the fit wasn't there. Whatever the reason may be, I usually recommend you still have that 10-year agreement. So you don't walk away from the agreement. You want to get as much as you can and sell the business. So what I recommend is, number one, speaking to the franchisor and seeing what your options are. The best way is selling to a fellow franchisee. As I mentioned in a previous, you pay a transfer fee, the buyer or seller, as long as it's getting paid. Sometimes there's no transfer fee. In many cases, it's just a nominal small transfer fee. If there's no neighboring franchisees, or maybe the neighboring franchisees aren't interested, you can look at a broker or working directly with the franchisor where they can send a listing out. A broker may want exclusivity, so you want to definitely read the agreements and speak with the franchisor first. They may know of someone right off the bat, like, hey, you know what? The whole state of New Jersey is sold out. We've been getting a lot of calls. So yeah, we may actually have a candidate for this specific area. Always want to try to sell the business. That's the biggest thing. You want to get some type of multiple on the money you're taking out of the business. I understand that's not always the case, but you always want to try to sell the business and work with that franchisor. So 15 great concerns that we get. A lot of it goes back to the fit. If you just dive in, these concerns and questions mostly come up if you're just going in and looking at a blind list of brands. If you create the model and just say, there's 4,000 franchise companies, I want to be part-time in the business to start. Well, many brands won't allow that. It needs to be under a $200K investment. Well, that's going to rule out pretty much all brick and mortar. But to have under 5 employees, it needs to give back to the community. As you're adding all these characteristics, it's becoming closer to something you're looking for. Will I have to work 80 hours a week? There are brands like mosquito spraying in certain states in the US where you're only spraying maybe 6-7 months a year. Some people have second homes in, who knows, in Europe, and they're able to vacation because there's no work in the winter season. Others will take advantage and provide a different service, maybe even do holiday lighting. So the match, I think, helps with all of this. Again, there's always going to be a risk. You're going to do all the due diligence you can to make sure the fit's there. You understand the role. You know exactly where the franchisor is going. You understand the support. You have trust in the franchisor. You believe in the franchisor. You're doing that all up front. And that's where I come into play. I have my finger on the pulse of franchising. I get to talk with a lot of the founders and CEOs and presidents and people involved with the brands. I don't know every brand. I don't know every aspect of franchising, but on a daily basis, we are talking with another professional, learning about the changes, the effects of AI. How will tariffs affect the business, if there's any effect at all? So we're here to help. There's no cost for what we do. We get paid directly from the franchise companies. They pay our fees, so you don't have to, which is really nice. Check out the website, ggthefranchiseguide.com. More than glad to review these questions on an intro call. There's a 3-question survey helping you figure out if a franchise may be a good fit, leading you to the calendar. As I mentioned, worst case scenario, you get a copy of the book, Franchise Freedom. It's my exact blueprint of finding my first franchise. I would love to help you out. Thanks again for all these questions. I keep everything confidential. So if a question comes up and we're having a call, I never use names. Even in success stories, we keep everything confidential unless we get the okay from you to share. Thanks again for joining. We really appreciate it. And we got some exciting episodes. We have a couple franchise companies coming back on the show. I'm really excited to share those. Until we talk again, take care. See you guys.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.